Hi, this is Dave and Jim with today's One Rep Constructive Conversation. Let's get into today's subject. All right, welcome back everybody. The topic today is, when is the lowest bid not the right bid? Is the lowest bid always the right bid, or isn't it? And how does that look from what's your perspective from a guy that's been in this industry now 30 years or more? YMCA projects, you have the bids come in, and there's 5 bids. One is 25% more than the lowest bid. Is the lowest bid always the right bid? And do you have to always take the lowest bid? Like, how's all that work? What's your opinion on it, Jim?
Almost never is the lowest bid the best bid. But sometimes, depending upon your funding sources, you have to accept the lowest qualified bid. I would stress that with One Rep, we're looking at preparing the information for the bidding processes so that the team of contractors are referring to as complete information as possible.
Right.
So that should we be required to employ the lowest qualified bid, we are confident that they've had sufficient information and time to compile their costing. But in the design, bid, build process that is often customary with YMCAs and construction, almost never is the lowest bid the best. And it's because there are so many gaps in the information, and you have to go through carefully the bids presented. And I would strongly urge any YMCA to interview the pool of contractors,
right,
to learn their understanding of the project. You got to remember, the design process can take years, right? Depending upon the complexities of the project. Then you submit the documents to the contractors, and they're expected in 4 weeks to ascertain what developed over years.
Right.
So there's going to be ambiguity, there's going to be guesswork, there's going to be confusion. And that's what you want to, that's why in many cases, it's not just the lowest bidder, it's the second bidder. There's so many interpretations of that, different interpretations of that information. And as a result, the low bidder is often not your best solution.
Okay, so I remember in some of our projects, and I assume we still do this, right? You get the bids in, and before the bids come in, they have an opportunity to call you and say, well, I have a question about this. Like, I don't understand this part of this. And you want them to call you because you want all of them bidding the same thing the same way. You want apples to apples, oranges to oranges. Correct. And what we always normally get is some kind of apples to oranges, right, between all 5 of these somehow. So, and I also remember for the project we did, like you gave us a sheet, and here's all the bidders, and here's all the things we look for, and they didn't, right. And we're kind of looking at, okay, there's actually a way to grade these things that kind of makes sense. Is that still the case now when you're looking at reviewing these bids and giving the information to a Y that hires an owner's rep?
Oh, by all means. There's an extensive, and it depends on the wishes of leadership as to the contracting approach you want to take. But if given if permitted to proceed in a negotiated approach,
right,
then we have the ability to more carefully ascertain the contractor's interpretation of information,
right,
by looking at the detail, understanding their cost structures, and then evaluating their interpretation of the nuts and bolts costs. Right? We do a deep dive, and this is after we've understood that this contractor is capable of doing the project to begin with. So before they've even put the time in to put the cost together, we believe, based on their experience, that they're capable of completing the project. But then we dive into the detail. We can spend an extraordinary amount of time before any commitments are made, understanding their estimated cost for the project.
Right. Then are they then, like say this is obviously general contractor, you know, a GM. You know, do they have to show all their work they did to put in this? Are they showing like the estimate they got from an electrician and the estimate so you can like drill down and kind of see where they're off, or not really?
Well, in many cases they have to submit that level of information to satisfy the funding sources, right? And then it's a matter of, we take that information and evaluate not just their bid, but to your point, going back through their collection of contractors and vendors that help them get to their base bid, and determining if the electrician has the low voltage equipment, the fire alarm system, or not. And if they don't, then they're in fact not the low bidder. And we return to the table with the contractor and help them understand that they may have this gap in their presentation, and how do they expect to mitigate that gap before we've even gone to contract.
So the low bid, going back to the original question, could be not the best bid. And the way to know that is to get somebody who's been in the construction industry, you know, 30 years, to look at all these and then ask questions for things that don't align on the bids. And you kind of figure out where they are. Plus calling references and all that kind of stuff too.
Sure.
To make sure they have a good track record out there with other WISE or other companies, at least, you know, with major projects. Anything else you want to add about the low contract not being the best contract before we wrap this up?
Well, you definitely, if I may, you want to be most skeptical of the low bid.
Yeah, right. And the highest one, in my opinion, I'm the chief CEO. So I go, why is that one like 20% more?
Well, but it's also can be very exciting, right? Oh, we have a number that works, you know, and you ignore the facts that relate to that number. The number is within budget. Sign them up before they realize they've forgotten all this stuff. That comes around quickly in the wrong ways.
In YMCA projects, for renovations or, you know, full buildings, right, full ground up, do the contractors kind of know the number you're looking for to begin with, or you don't really share that?
No,
because aren't they going to tell you what you want to hear then? You know, I mean,
well, they've probably heard that for example, many YMCA's boast of their future project in the newspaper is a $15 million YMCA. But what they don't realize is that $15 million isn't just construction costs. It has all your soft costs, all your holding costs. So, you know, they may be misguided by what they've seen in the public about the project. But no, we don't want to skew their efforts by saying this project must be here. We want let's see where they expect this project to be, and then we determine how we can move forward with that information.
So we had another video about change orders, right? And I think there's a little bit of relationship. So let's say the lowest one is not the obvious one because there's all kinds of holes, right? And let's say you have 5 and you're like, okay, so we want to talk to the next 3 or maybe even the next 4 and have a conversation, you know, and I'm going to paraphrase, right? They're all too high. We need to go back and sharpen your pencil. Like, I almost wonder if everybody expects that at this point, right? And if that's the case, if they get it down to the number, is it really a real number? Or now they're like, okay, well, we're really got to do more change orders because now we can't make our profit margin we wanted to based on the first number we gave. Like, how does that, like, I know it's chasing a little bit of a rabbit here, but it does have to do with the lowest.
Well, you know, obviously we need to be careful because we don't want a collusive environment in these negotiations. But we also don't want to force in my professional opinion, the contractors to try to make it to work. Right?
That's
because they just want to get the contract. So back to your point, referring to change orders. Then let that game begin. Right. And sure, we can do it for a nickel. But it's going to cost you $1 later. And so the best to put the YMCA in the best position is to truthfully understand the project cost with that contractor on board. And if that first and low bid has, you know, perceivably 10, 20% gaps in
Right.
that information, well, we can anticipate that the YMCA is going to have to invest 10 or 20% more in that low bidder.
Right.
Whereas the second bidder may be only 5% away, but has it all.
Right.
So we're 15% to the good, and we have no burdens and headaches of change orders and delays that come with it.
Well, and I imagine that maybe that second bidder, the reason they're even close is maybe they have a lot of those subs in-house, right? They got their own drywall guys in-house,
Oh,
or
sure.
whatever, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then that saves from hiring somebody else,
Right.
And there's only one markup, not two, technically.
Right.
So again, getting a little closer with the second one or the third one, depending on the situation, might be a little bit more doable for what I'm trying to say is valid reasons.
Well, but I would also want to reinforce some of our earlier conversations about having appropriately selected the pool of contractors. Right? We don't want Wally, the pickup driver and contractor on the weekends, to be involved in our multi-million-dollar project because they don't have the experience or the financial structure to support a project of this scale. We want to bring the appropriate team to the table in the competitive negotiative process. And that's what we reinforce in almost each and every project we're involved in. Competitive negotiations to ensure the greatest return on the YMCA's investment.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim. I would end this by saying, as I do in many of these videos, that it's one thing to know what you should do. It's another thing to be able to do it if you're the CEO and you don't have 30 years of construction experience. You don't speak the language deep enough to have those conversations to understand where those gaps are going to be. And if you don't get it right from the beginning, it is that tree branch that starts growing crooked and just keeps going. One of my favorite analogies. You have to start it right. You have to start it with the right expertise. You don't have to, I should say, but they're rolling the dice for what's going to go wrong. And it's, you know, our goal is, again, to save Wise time, money, and grief. Right. Yeah. So, all right, with that, we will say thank you, and we'll see you next time. Well, that's our One Rep constructive conversation for today. Thanks for watching. You know, One Rep, we want to bring what we've learned in Pennsylvania to the whole rest of the country. We've had extensive experience doing YMCA capital projects here over the last 25 years, and we've had great success minimizing changes that YMCAs have had to make, compromises. You know, we're minimizing the compromises that YMCAs have to make. And part of that, of course, is we want to minimize the unnecessary charges, and you know what that winds up being a lot of times is an increase in the mortgage amount, right? The debt load. And we want to make sure your why is successful and your project is successful. So if you'd like more information about One Rep, you could visit us on our website. We have a Facebook page. We're on LinkedIn. Please give Jim or I a call anytime. We're happy to come out to your why and talk to you about your project, or have a free Zoom consultation to talk about your project. Thanks for watching again, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.